Welcome back to Getting Mentioned by AI, the show where we explore how to win in a world where AI, not Google, decides who gets seen. In this episode, I, Mike, share my first thoughts on content creation through the lens of GEO, that's Generative Engine Optimization, and Ed's here to challenge, question, and build on the ideas as we unpack what makes content visible to AI and how creators and business owners can adapt before the rest of the world catches up. Yeah, so I think I told you, right, that in my professional life, I'm kind of struggling with this idea of we sit in the same meetings and we have the exact same content that we consume, and we even sit next to each other on a day-to-day basis. How can it be that I have this mega sense of urgency to upskill myself on all things AI, and yet you sit next to me all day and you don't even know what Copilot is, right? I think I told you, right? It's like, this is my reality and I struggle with that. And I think that the same analogy can be said for the shift that we are, I don't want to say seeing, but more like, yeah, we are in the midst of that shift, I would almost say, right? It's the idea of Google. If I really like this idea of this analogy, is the idea that Google used to give us like 10 search results because we only scroll the first 10, and then below that, let alone page rank 2, we don't look at.
Unless you're really desperate.
Yes, but at least it gives us 10 different search results, right? But we are now moving to a world where the LLMs or AI, they're just going to give you one answer to your question. And so if you are not part of that answer, you're going to be invisible. You know what I mean? And I think that is kind of brutal almost. And so when I think about foundational content and how to get started on this whole geo topic and how to get mentioned by AI, number one, if you think like, oh, this is just SEO 2.0, I think you're really on the wrong track here on how you need to approach this. Because we are no longer chasing keywords, looking at search traffic and like, whatever. As long as I write an article long enough, I will be ranked into Google, because you cannot really rank your way into the LLMs in that sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so for today, I prepared just a few thoughts with regards to maybe some of my initial learnings on this topic, on how to get started with optimizing or content on this kind of LLM journey as I'm preparing to build my own platform in this whole experiment. And again, the very first thing that comes to mind is a little bit cliche, but I think is very true, is the idea that you have to flip a switch in your head, right? Because we are moving from, or let me put it like this, it's like my whole world, and by default also your whole world, like we've been spending the last 10, 15, 20 years playing this game of keywords, backlinks, trying to get on page rank number 1. And then that is kind of automatically going to drive traffic to your website. But in the geo world, the whole ranking, as I just said, doesn't really exist. There is no page rank. There is no page 1 in that sense.
True.
Right? And so the question in the SEO world was always, how can I rank as best as possible? And that question no longer translates into the geo world, because the question that we need to really ask ourselves from a foundational perspective is not even how can I get mentioned by AI. That's not even the question to ask. The very first question you need to ask yourself is, does AI even know I exist?
Yes.
That is literally where we are starting, where everybody needs to start, right? And so this is really about recognition. You have to exist first in the world of AI before it can even mention you. And as I said before, you cannot really rank your way in there.
But I would also suggest for the people that are spending a lot of time and money on SEO, it shows also something that it's not a lost case, right? It's not like, oh, all the things I did in the last 10 years is now waste because there's a new platform. Because like what you said, AI or like an LLM needs to know that you exist. And how do we know that you exist is by being in on the internet, by in the Google, in the Bing. Like we all know that, like for example, an OpenAI gets a lot of data from Bing. So if you can be found in Bing in the traditional way, that means that the LLM can also find you.
That is very true, but I
The
would
only thing is different, like what you said, before you get 10 lists, now there's 10 results. Now you get only one. So it's now you need to be the one.
That is very true, but I would also argue that that only is going to be the case for the next 2 to 3 years still. You know what I mean? Because then when ranking loses its value as a whole, there will be, I don't know, we don't know, right? But there will be kind of a different way on how all of that is going to go. Because I think that when you think about the traditional way in SEO, there your visibility and how you are being found and all these things really comes through search, right? People put in the search box how to go. And in the new
Yes.
way, the GEO way, it comes much more through understanding. If AI does not understand who you are, what you represent, if it doesn't understand that, who you are and what you represent, it cannot confidently mention you in an answer. And so the very first step that I have to do, and for context, I am starting from absolute scratch, is the idea that I need to really define my platform clearly enough so that AI can start to recognize me as part of a source of knowledge that it needs to pull from. And that is where I am starting with regards to my geo contents journey. With before I even publish anything, I have to be super clear on what I want AI to know about me so that I can make sure that everything I'm going to publish following that aligns with how I want AI to perceive me. And with that, the very first thing that we need to do, or the first understanding that we need to have, is the idea that clarity is going to beat everything, right? That means that all in the SEO world, if I can continue to refer to it a little bit like that,
Yeah.
is the idea that we can get away with a whole lot of fluff. Our homepage can be fluff. Our about page can be the greatest marketing pitch in the world. Basically, everything on our website can be fluff, and we focus a lot of our attention on, let's say, a blog section. And then even in these blogs, we are driven by the idea that ideally we want to have articles that are as long as possible, that are as high keyword dense as possible. And we put a lot of fluff in these things. And that is a major, major change with regards to where the world is moving today, right? It's the idea that AI is not going to do vague, because AI is built on patterns, statistics, definitions. So if you are unclear or you are inconsistent, AI cannot categorize you. And if it cannot categorize you, AI is not going to mention you. So the very first thing that you need to do, maybe a little bit more for people that have an existing platform, is that you need to do what I would just call a clarity audit. And that practically means that you need to look at your platform. Well, not even your platform. You need to look at every touch point about you. So you look at, on your platform, you might look at your about section, the taglines. You would look at your social media profiles, maybe for your business, all these things. And then you need to ask yourself a very, very practical question, where you need to ask yourself, if AI reads through all of this, can it explain in one factual sentence what it is that I do? And if the answer is no, it means you are still too vague and you need to strip it out even more. And here is where the challenge comes. Because in my
Mm-hmm.
current process, I have my domain. I am building like mock-ups of how I want things to look. So I'm building like a look and feel because that's just who I am. I need to have a visual
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But even there, like just for my homepage and like my headline and my tagline and all these things, I think you naturally go into the fluff. You know what I mean? Everything has to sound good. It has to be branded a certain way. And
But I think that is the transition period we are still living in, right? Like it's 2025. We are still uh, looking towards nice websites that have an identity and like it's the visual part, right?
but
Well,
that is my whole
A
point. My whole
AI is just looking at like, hey, tell me the fact. The same as I would say, you can read a book of 400 pages and it might be mind blown, but that book can also maybe summarized in 3 pages. And then if you would put the summary at the beginning of the book, you can technically say, hey, now I've read the book because the rest is all stories, like anecdotes, like building blocks. But the real truth, and that is with AI now, right? So you still can have the fluff, right? That it's not like you get penalized as long as at the top of your content you basically have your answer. So if
I'm
you
going to
ask,
disagree with that statement, to be honest, because first, my point here was going to be that it is very difficult in today's world, just by who we are as humans, to cut the fluff. I think by default,
mhm,
very much,
yeah,
or maybe I just speak for myself, not on behalf of humanity, I gear towards the fluff. The beautiful,
mhm,
I will have that tagline rewritten by AI 20 times until I feel it hits the exact mark. But I think that clarity and cutting the fluff is what is going to give you the foundation that you need in order in the future to be mentioned by AI. And I will expand on that as I kind of
mhm.
go
Okay,
along.
yeah.
But what that still means is for your platform, right? Is really the idea of you need to ask yourself, who is my audience and what do I help them achieve? And that needs to be one sentence that you can define. And that one sentence is not necessarily for you, but it is kind of the sentence that AI would train its mental model on of what you do. And
Yeah.
if you cannot define in one sentence, who do you help and what do you help these people achieve? Again, it becomes very difficult for AI. And so that means that for me and my platform, it's like I have to, and kind of as you go into searching for a niche and all these things, it's like I have to pick a clear audience. I have to
Mhm,
define some sort of an outcome for these people. What does my platform help these people with? And then I have to make sure that that message of who I am and who I help, how I help these people, that messaging becomes very consistent about everything, all the touch points that I create. And to be fair, this is not about you just copy pasting all that text everywhere, but it is. I'll give you the example, right? It's the idea
yeah.
of like if on your website you say one thing, and then on your LinkedIn where you mention that website, it has a completely different description of what you do. That is a disconnect. And these things you need to just make sure that are very aligned across the board on that same exact messaging so that when AI finds it, when it scans it, when it reads it, it always kind of comes
Yes.
back to the same like who you are, what you do, and that you're not helping senior citizen on this part of your website and all of a sudden you talk about teenagers somewhere else. That's going to be really hard and confusing because AI is all about the clarity. And what that then also means is that for somebody like me who is getting started from zero, again, I think I'll repeat that many times,
Mhm,
is that you also, again, or myself, you have the tendency to go big very immediately when you think about building a platform. And actually, when you get started and you're building purposefully for the purpose of being mentioned by AI, I would almost say when it comes to the pages that you have, etc., it is almost the approach of less is more. Because in the SEO world, the rule is very much just publish more, right? The more you publish, it's all going to help you in the end. But with GEO, it is kind of like the opposite, because AI does not learn from the volume that you post, right? Just because you have 5,000 articles published doesn't mean that AI will learn more from you than if you only have 100 articles published. What AI learns from is structure. And so when you are building a platform from a content perspective, is that you have to very carefully look at what pages do I actually need to get started, and how can I make sure that the text I put on all of these pages are, of course, not fluff. They are quite factual, and they have that consistent messaging, right? So when you think about your about page, we are, like I said before, we're very inclined to put massive marketing jargons on there, but you have to really think about it like it's just about who I am, what I do, who I do it for. Why is that unique, right? You have to keep it very to the point. You want to have an FAQ page with real questions and short, direct answers. It's almost like you want to have a page on your platform that almost mimics the prompts that people would put in, right? It's like bam, bam. You might want to have a resource page where you are putting in a lot of facts, links to references, and kind of that builds authority, right? Like a proof page in that sense. And so no need for you to start with your GEO journey on trying to build like 2,000 pages and 600 blog posts. First, make sure that your foundation
makes sense,
that it makes sense, and that it positions you consistently as whatever it is that you want to be positioned. And that is probably a whole lot harder to do and takes more time than you probably imagine, right? Because then it's like, okay, if my about page says this, how can I link that to my FAQ page? Because that's another learning I have, and I think this is a very, very important one when it comes to your content. It is not about necessarily what you say, it is more about how it all connects together. Because AI is not reading pages one by one. What AI is doing, it is mapping meaning. So that means that in your content, you have to showcase the relationship between basically the ideas that you post. And I found another analogy that I really liked on how to think about structuring the content that you kind of post. And it's a tree analogy. And so it's the idea that the trunk of the tree is going to be the main topic, meaning this is the thing you want your platform to be known for. And then you would have branches, and these branches are like your main categories, kind of the subtopics that support the big thing that you want to be known for. And then you would have the leaves on the trees that are like your smaller specific pages to support that, right? And if you scatter, in the analogy, your leaves all over the internet with no structure, AI cannot follow that logic. But if everything connects together, right? Every branch is connected back to the trunk. Every leaf is connected to a branch that is connected back to the trunk. Then AI starts to understand the ecosystem that you are building. And this is, again, a big change, I think, from the original perspective, because originally I would just have my website and I would put all my focus and energy into my blog section, and whatever keyword I could find that day, I would just write a topic about or an article about. And of course, I would put a backlink into another article, but there is absolutely no specific reasoning or structure behind. And when you think about getting started with content for GEO, you really have to think about what is this kind of tree structure that you want to put in. And that is also something I am doing right now, where I'm defining upfront before I publish anything. I think about, okay, this is my topic, and then what could be the big kind of pillars, right? The pillar pages, and then what are sub pages? And that can still be an infinite amount of topics, but at least I have a really good sense of how I want to build it from the ground up, right?
Amazing. Yeah, you just don't write for Google anymore. You
No.
just write now for humans that are searching for truth or an answer in an LLM.
No, yeah, you're not even right. To be fair, I would even go a step further, right? It's the idea that you are not writing for humans in that sense. You are writing, or you're writing to teach AI the context of your topic, how things relate to each other, and why you are the platform that gives the clearest connection between how things relate to each other, and that AI starts to understand that for things on that topic, it can start to pull the content from you because you have very clearly structured your content and you make it very easy for AI to pull not just from that article, but it understands that, oh, there's also something about that on that page, and that it all links to each other. So we are
Mhm.
going from the way that I would phrase this shift is that we go from content creation to content architecture. You know what I mean? We have to be
Mm.
much more
Good.
structured in how we think. And if you can get that right as a foundation, then I think you are very well on your way. Because here's my thought, right? Because I think you mentioned it earlier, is the idea of like, of course, if you are a website today and your competitor is like 10 years old and they have all this domain authority and they have published 60,000 blog posts, of course, right? Is going to be hard to beat in that sense. But at the
Mhm.
same time, there is still the opportunity today, right? It's I almost want to say like a once in a lifetime opportunity where it's like, even if you start from scratch today, if you structure it well, if you are clear enough and you do your content architecture, AI, the LLMs, there's a high chance that they will still prefer you over your big competitor. In the
Mm.
SEO, in the Google world, the SEO world, yes, you will not win. But in the
Yeah.
GEO world, you can win. And I ask myself why, but this is just like a brain whatever, is the idea. I'm really asking myself, like, okay, if I am the owner of this big platform and I spend 10 years of my life, optimize and everything, you know what I mean? It's like, am I really going back now to change everything about my platform to geo optimize it, or do I just let it be? And that is even conditioned on the fact, am I even aware that I should be changing the structure,
Yes.
that I should be writing differently, right? And I think that that is also the opportunity, right? That 99% will not realize that the way they are doing is not the way forward
Mhm.
anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the really good opportunity to have. And I hope that for the platforms that we want to build, but also just for people who see the same opportunity today, that we can start to see online some, yeah, really some use cases that are going to support this theory of David and Goliath, if I may put it in
Mhm.
context like that, right? That even the small things, structure, clarity, and like content architecture are going to beat the big giants, because that's just what AI prefers. And it's almost like a big corporate company versus a startup.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, the big corporate might see the opportunity as well, but the way that they are structured, the way that things work within them, it's just very, very slow to change. And it is the startup that can consistently adapt to new situations and can therefore move a whole lot faster.
So in that sense, this would be a great upskill opportunity for the people that are currently are SEO managers.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it is a great
because
sales
if you
opportunity for
if you
people.
if you have now this skill or the awareness that there's another pathway that you need to build or like cultivate, then you are set apart from the normal SEO people. So it's either you get more new clients or you can charge more because now you have a skill that is becoming more and more in demand.
Yes, but but also there, I am a little bit afraid that it would still be, even in a few years from now, like that this is only known to the 1%. You know what I mean? It's that it's like, yes, every business owner, everybody who owns a website or is remotely serious about driving traffic through search should be making changes. But most people would be very busy, business owners, all these things, they have no idea, right? And
No,
so
so that's why I'm referring to SEO managers, not like graphic designers or website builders, because if you are in the world of SEO and you still didn't hear anything about this, then probably you should change your job, um, or at least do a course or spend some time in the world, right? Like, because I even saw recently there are already SEO plugins that having now new features, to be searched or to be known in search, like not just search like the old sitemap system for Google. They have now features to be featured in LLMs. So yeah, if you use these tools as well, then you think, oh, there's a new feature. What is this? Hey, oh, there's something, right? So it's like, yes, it
I
it will
think
become more and more obvious, unless, and there again, we are. It depends on what kind of world you live in or work in. Because if you work in a corporate world with an IT department of 200 people, and you are the only one, yes, then it would be a tougher case as versus like, oh, I run my own website or blog or something.
put it like this. I think that every person that works in SEO today needs to be reskilling or upskilling themselves towards this. And yes, they can
Yes.
sell this to all of their clients and projects that they work on. I think it would also make, and I'm if anybody steals this idea, I'm coming after you, or maybe it already exists. But yeah, it would make the perfect technology to write a SaaS tool that could take your existing architecture on the back end, which is, let's assume, traditional search driven, and
Yeah.
could at least come up with, if you taking what you have currently and come up with at least a preview on the changes you would need to make to be able to go from the SEO optimized to geo optimized from, for example, the content architecture structure. So you
Like
could
a side
see,
scan.
yeah, so that you could at least see how much work is involved, and maybe you could also see what the risk would be or how that might affect your Google rankings. And are you willing to lose some of your Google rankings today in order to see the ROI on that investment in 2 years from now through the LLMs, right? There is
Yeah.
something there in terms of a tool. More tools pop up. I think in a future episode we will should dive into all of that. Because as a side comment, because this is so new, so because you were saying now, oh yeah, we have these SEO or these plugins coming. I still think that from a tool perspective, many companies are still guessing on what it is that we should
Yes.
be doing. Because if the blueprint was already there, you and I would not be having this conversation. You know what I mean?
So
But yeah, I have one or two more things to share in that sense, right? Here's where I'm going to struggle the most, is the idea of, if you build your platform and you build for clarity and you really make sure that your messaging is consistent throughout all of the touch points that you have a content architecture in place where everything really cleanly relates to each other in a logical way. And so you're really confident in that you are building with the LLMs in mind and a little bit less with Google in mind. It's the idea of, you also need to start to track your progress, which is really hard to do because, yes, I think nowadays already you can go and buy tools and all these things. But I would recommend that you don't necessarily go and jump into tools, because with SEO, you just basically check your traffic, your clicks, you track what kind of keywords you have. And in
Yeah,
GEO, that doesn't really work, right? You can't log, at least not yet, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong if you know. Like, I want to say, you cannot yet log into Google Analytics and necessarily see
true.
how many times ChatGPT mentioned you, right? But you
No.
should be doing a little, once you are up and running, right? And you, of course, you would submit your sitemap to all the traditional websites, all these things. Once that's all up and running, at least once a month, you open the big platforms. You go to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Claude, and you ask them, let's say, 5 questions that your content should really, your content answers super clear.
Yeah.
If your website shows up, that's amazing. And if you don't, that is also data to learn from. And this is where I am going to struggle. I already know this upfront, right? Because I am somebody who needs to have results like yesterday. And GEO rewards focus. It does not reward speed. There is no, like I said before, there is absolutely no need for you to be like, by tomorrow, I need to have my platform with 60 pages live and all. No. Less is more. And again, the more clean you are, the more structured you are, the more connected you are. That is what's being rewarded. And I don't know too much yet. I'm going to be really honest, but yeah,
Yeah.
you know that AI has a cutoff date with regards to the data that it learns from, right? And on top of that, of course, the LLMs, they can go to the internet and they can go and find answers for what it has, for what the training data might not have
Yes.
an answer for. And so my best guess is when you start is that Perplexity is probably the first. This is going to be my assumption that the Perplexity-like tools is where you're going to see your first results, because from what I understand, they really do go to the internet to go and
Yeah.
find the answer, where a Claude might first go to its training data before it goes to other places, right?
Yes. If he cannot find something, yeah.
Yeah. And so that means that this is the long game. And I already know I'm going to struggle here. But I will have you to help me be accountable on trying to figure this out.
It's the long game.
I want to add
But
one more thought on the idea of you don't have to go rogue and publish 60 pages in one go. Here's the other challenge when it comes to slowing down and going slow is the idea that you have to also find your way in updating your content.
yeah.
The LLMs love content. Again, you don't have to publish new things every single day, but it is more about taking what you have, and of course, you continue to add to that in a structured way, but it is more about making sure that what you have gets repeatedly updated, because AI values freshness and consistency. So instead of consistently posting new things, it's very important to go back and improve upon what already exists. And improving means you add new data, you put in new definitions, or you define things even more clear, you put in better links to resources, and every small update that you make to existing content is going to allow for AI to understand you better. It's kind of like building muscle, where after you publish your content, if a month in you go back and you update it and you give it something new, it is like a rep that you do if you're like building muscle.
Yeah.
And so my last kind of thing that like I said, I'm trying to get my head around is that instead of going fast and go all in, you have to go slow, but you have to go deep and you have to go consistent.
Awesome.
And so if I recap and then I'll close my thoughts, is the idea of how am I getting started with GEO and I'm building from scratch? Is that number one, I'm changing my mindset. So I am not here to chase Google page rank 1, but instead I'm focused on how can I get AI to even recognize that I exist. The way that
Yeah.
I do that is that I make sure that my mantra is clarity first. Cut the fluff, meaning say exactly what you mean. And that less is more. I don't need to put in 60 pages, right? The pages that I want to have, I make sure that it just clearly defines who I am, who I help, and how I'm helping them. And that
Yeah.
I then make sure that everything is connected in a very logical way, that I kind of build my tree. And then from there, I will start to check. And then it's about going in for the long run and not look at the short term. I have no idea how long this is going to take. It might take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And then only then can you kind of say where that is. And
Yeah,
so
it also
again,
depends on how much it's changing, right? Like, I think that is the main thing for us in
yeah,
general. Like, things are, and that's the thing what I struggle with. Like, you hear so many things, so many new things, so many automations and nano banano and all the stuff. Like, but for you to really dig in, what does this do? What does this mean? How does this work? What can it do? Then, like before you figured one thing out, there are already four other new announcements made, right? By Claude and OpenAI and Google. So yeah, I think that's like I think we also for our podcast and our journey would be that like, hey, how can we see the like the truth or the things that are important or versus the things that are just nice but it's not really going anywhere because it might be changed in 3 months or bought by one of the big players or anything,
that
right?
that of course we don't know. But if I conclude with this, it would be this: the sooner you start to build for for how AI understands,
Mhm.
the sooner it will start to mention you. And that's it for today's episode of Getting Mentioned by AI. To be clear, we are just getting started on this journey from absolute zero. There's no playbook, definitely no shortcuts, just real experiments and lessons as they happen. If you want to join us to go on your own Getting Mentioned by AI journey, then head over to gettingmentionedbyai.com. We'll be sharing everything as we learn so that you can get discovered, you can get ahead, and you can get mentioned by AI.